Hello, Hardcore Finance Show listeners and viewers. This is Alex and Shimon coming back to you with the one, the only, the amazing Representative Margaret Croke from Illinois, Chicago's 12th district, actually, or Illinois. Margaret, you correct me because I'm not the best with districts, but you've been on the show before.
Don't worry, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of local elected. So it's 12th district for Illinois. You had it. You were right. And I'm in Chicago. My district is is only in Chicago, the north side. So
there we go. And this is where I grew up, and very close to where Shimon and I went to school for our when we got our master's degrees. And so it's near and dear to our hearts. And what's even more near and dear to our hearts is that the last time we spoken with you, you were pushing crypto-friendly laws as a Democrat, which was bipartisan in Illinois. So I know that it hit some roadblocks, but maybe you can, it's been a year. So what the heck is new and what's the latest and greatest in the 12th district of Illinois?
Yeah, so thanks for having me again, guys. It's really great to see you, even if it's via computer. I'm really happy to be here. So I'll give a quick update and we can kind of dive into some of the stuff surrounding crypto and the markets right now. But yeah, last time we spoke, I was pushing a special purpose trust company for the state of Illinois. Since then, we've had some treasury guidance that's really helped our banks in the state be able to operate and be custodians of digital assets. So the bill was less important for those banking institutions or those kind of traditional financial institutions, and was more focused on companies that wanted to create these trust companies from scratch. When I first pushed the bill, you mentioned it. Huge bipartisan support. I think we had 40 co-sponsors on it. People were really excited about it. And what was awesome about it is I had industry support and consumer protection group support. Everyone loved this idea of smart regulation. And I think honestly, companies love smart regulation. As long as you know what hoops you have to jump through from the start and we don't change the rules on you midway, regulation can be a good thing for everyone. But we hit some hiccups in the other chamber, the Senate chamber. And I think it really was around the fact that crypto is still this very new, scary technology for so many people who don't operate within the industry and unfortunately are unwilling to learn about the complexities, but also some of the amazing things that can come with digital assets and blockchain. So that's where it hit a snag. And then, of course, when it hit that snag is when crypto was getting a lot of bad press. So much bad press, which you guys, I'm sure, are so familiar with. And while my bill focused on regulation, I think that just any type of crypto-specific legislation was going to scare people off. And then I ran another bill that would allow for companies or individuals to pay the Department of Revenue in cryptocurrency. And you could pay in crypto, and then the state would never be a custodian of crypto, and I don't want the state to be a custodian of crypto, but we'd have a third party really similar to a credit card processor that would that would convert into fiat currency, into the US dollar. So that got passed, but also was hit a lot of snags with my side of the aisle. I had a lot of Democrats who were no, we don't want to see this. And I'm okay, that's just going to be more fees on people. You understand that that's going to cost them more money, which is something we don't want to do. So yeah, it's definitely been an interesting time. And I think that unfortunately crypto has just gotten kind of blown up in the press, and people are a little bit more cautious around it.
I mean, I have to say every bear market is a little bit different. I was speaking on a panel at a very traditional conference in London that had bankers. It was called DAS, Digital Asset Summit. But basically, they asked me on the panel, how is this bear market different? And I'm look, it's in a sense, they're all the same, where, yeah, the press is very, very happy to pile on, and take like bad decisions by companies and say that it's crypto. Like, for example,
yes,
you can look at Celsius versus BlockFi, for example. So both companies were giving you yield, but the only difference was in the terms and conditions. BlockFi basically said, look, you will never lose your money. If the stuff goes against us, the equity holders will lose money, but the depositors will not. Versus Celsius, they had the whole money pooled right in a pool, and so then depositors lost money. And this is very different because as an investor, you take risk, right? Alex? Oh, you lost money? I'm sorry, Alex. I forgot about that.
I definitely had money in Celsius.
Yeah.
Have money in Celsius. Still have money in Celsius. So,
but my point is, this is like a company's decision. They didn't even lie to people. Like, this was terms and conditions that people agreed to. And probably they got a little bit higher yield on Celsius than in BlockFi because the risk was higher. What did the press say? Oh, crypto is full of scammers and everything. And I actually looked at it, every time there was a new technology, like whether it's the railroads, whether it's the Industrial Revolution, there were always scammers and always companies that promised stuff. And a lot of the government regulation, like the SEC and stuff, was founded in times where, people were just getting scammed, and especially people who are not very literate in terms of their finances. But I think that there is a lot of goodwill with the government. Like Gary Gensler yesterday wrote, "Happy 14th birthday to Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper. It has led to innovation in crypto asset investing. Let's make sure as crypto enters its 15th year that investors get proper protection." So I love that. It's the chairman of the SEC, and he says, look, there's risk and we need protections, but like, let's not throw the baby with the bathwater. Is your experience like that? Basically, there's no understanding and people just think crypto is dangerous, or is there some understanding of the difference between the technology and the companies operating?
I think that there is some understanding of the technology, which is why I like to say blockchain instead of crypto, even though, sometimes legislation is only really targeted towards crypto versus like the overarching blockchain technology. And I don't honestly know how you would even regulate, nor would you want to regulate blockchain technology. I think that's kind of goes against what blockchain technology is. But I get a lot of, I think there is a lot of fear from the consumer side. You kind of mentioned it. I will say that I don't think at some point we should always expect the consumer to be incredibly well educated in some of the decisions they're making. And we have to be more explicit about the risks that they are undertaking, but also as a government, we have to realize that not everyone's reading those terms and conditions. So we got to make sure they have some level of protection, depending on how they invest. And, crypto got so I want to say it almost got like really exciting, right? Everyone wanted to, even if they were just like doing a little bit on Coinbase, they wanted to see how that played every single day, like the ups, the downs. It was like and I think that that's where you had a lot of uneducated investors get involved. I think there's also a lot of conversations about where crypto is being, where crypto is coming from, like whether it's the exchanges or, and I say that like with foreign governments. So like there's a lot of conversation about Iran using a lot of crypto, or authoritarian governments using a lot of crypto, and what that could potentially lead to, and how that crypto is actually, because it's an asset, how like the exchanges are all tied up into that too. So my colleagues have some concerns, but they're unable to differentiate those concerns, if that makes sense. Like, their one concern clouds their judgment about the entire industry, even if it has nothing to do with, or even if it's a good thing. It's that word. It's like that cryptocurrency buzzword, and then all of a sudden ears perk up and everyone gets like very scared.
It's so interesting that you mentioned this, because look, we work at an exchange, and we're regulated in the US. We follow all of the regulations that that touch us: KYC, AML, Howey test for, not listing securities. If there is any kind of investigation, we immediately adhere to it. Like if anybody reaches out to us, any law enforcement agency, of course. And the interesting part here is that, I know people think crypto, Iran and all those and criminals. The best thing is it's all structured data. You know exactly who is using what, when, and where. And if you don't, there are companies like Chainalysis, there are companies like Elliptic and others that do forensics. I mean, I'm not saying anything, I think, proprietary, but the FBI uses Chainalysis, quite a bit. So, and for good reason, right? Because they can actually literally follow where the funds go. And so there's that part that's interesting. And the other part is like, at some point, people have to differentiate Bitcoin versus crypto, right? And what's happening on the Bitcoin network. And, on the third part, I know we're speaking, this is a little bit of a philosophical maybe argument, but with the geopolitics of the world, us cutting Russia and so on off the SWIFT system, Russia cutting Europe off, natural gas and so on, there's going to be a fragmentation of, or we can see how certain governments, and let's just take the U.S. completely out of this. Let's call ourselves a benevolent, good guy government, so that we don't go into U.S. domestic policy. But there are bad guy governments. There's North Korea. There's capital controls in Russia, capital controls in China, capital controls in India. Pretty much the whole rest of the world, has these capital controls. And this gives an ability for citizens to actually take their wealth and move out. So if an engineer wants to move out of Russia because they don't support the war and go elsewhere, they're not going to carry bags of gold with them, nor are they going to carry the Russian ruble, which is now illegal to exchange in the Western world. How are we going to get the people out of the country to come here and work for us? Conversely, how do we fund, Ukraine came out many times thinking crypto and the crypto rails, right? For getting the money instantaneously, right? So they can take the money, convert it to hryvnia, which is the currency, or dollars, or whatever they want to convert it to, or even use it sometimes to pay for, health kits, to pay for humanitarian aid, to pay for arms, to pay for whatever. So it's, I don't know if you're seeing more or less of this kind of good guy, bad guy world, but the world is actually fairly gray. For every bad guy that we think is bad, someone else thinks they're good. And look, some people are truly evil, right? There's some countries that are truly evil, but everything else is pretty much gray. And crypto actually allows the citizens to gain power. And we talked about this last time, as the U.S., this is the most U.S. invention. This is the most patriotic, freedom-loving invention ever. If people just, kind of pull back and look at what the U.S. is and why we were invented as a country, or created as a country, I should say. Anyway, well, it wasn't even a question, Margaret. It was just kind of like
no, I know. I think it's a really interesting ideological argument to make. I would say that for the states, and at least I think that the states like Illinois, or New York or California or whatever, there's a little bit of trepidation, I think, to get involved into these global affairs around crypto, and then also kind of national policy around crypto. So I feel like my colleagues are wanting to take a step back and just see what the feds do. And then we just throw up our hands, which I don't love. I don't want to do any regulation that's going to be muted essentially by whatever Treasury or the federal government decides to do. And I also don't want to put additional regulation on the industry, let the federal government do that. But I don't think that you need to remain completely silent on it, right? I think that there is a role for states, like any type of industry. I mean, we talk about it in Illinois. We do tax incentives around data centers. We do tax incentives around microchips. We can encourage blockchain technology or cryptocurrency or any type of financial institution that wants to deal with crypto to say, hey, Illinois is a great place to do it. We're not going to we're not going to step in and put a bunch of crazy regulation on you. We want to see this industry grow. Maybe we can even provide some workforce development around this industry with the University of Illinois or Northwestern. Like, we can encourage programs to be built around this industry. And so when someone wants to start their company in Illinois, they're not desperate for applications for people to work there. There's a lot of way Illinois and a state can be involved in cryptocurrency that doesn't involve just like hard, fast rules and regulations. But because of the bad press around the technology, a lot of my colleagues are like, well, cryptocurrency is just going to go away. And I really want to explain to them, I really don't think it's going anywhere. Maybe you're likely to go somewhere before cryptocurrency goes anywhere. So we're going to have to deal with this, and we need to stop hiding underneath a blanket or something and just kind of face it head on and learn and educate ourselves.
Yeah, that's very cool. So last time we spoke, I remember you were saying that you want to attract businesses to be headquartered in Chicago. I know that Strike is a prominent company in Chicago. They do, I think, cross-border remittances. See, this is an idea when people are skeptical about Bitcoin. I always give them examples of like how to use the Bitcoin network without even being exposed to the price. So what Strike does is like you can send basically money from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world for free or almost free. And what they do is they basically take your dollars, convert them to Bitcoin, send the Bitcoin to the other side of the world, and immediately convert it back to dollars or to the local currency. And so this would not be available without the Bitcoin network, but you're not exposed to the Bitcoin price. So I think, to your point about blockchain, I'm kind of less of a believer in permissioned blockchains, but like open blockchains that anyone can access. I think it's a fantastic technology. So are you seeing any movement since we last spoke, or is it because of the bear market and the economy in general? I mean, I'll just say another thing I said at the conference is like, this is the first time since Bitcoin was created that the economy is like contracting a little bit. Like until now, every single, basically interest rates were going down, the money supply was going up. Actually, the last time there was a deep bear market in 2018 was when the Federal Reserve contracted a tiny little bit. So basically new information is entering the system. Now we will see how those assets will survive, different economic conditions. But how is it looking from your guys' perspective?
I think that everyone is just like, they are terrified. And I just really quickly back to Alex's point about like Bitcoin being, or like not Bitcoin, but, crypto being kind of this American American ideology, like it's like patriotic and everything like that. One of the things that everyone keeps forgetting is like with one technology or with one innovation, all these other innovations come around it. Like there are sub industries that are popping around, not just exchange, like it's not just exchanges, it's not just tokens. Like there are sub industries that are coming around to help industry and good actors self-regulate too. Like I had a conversation with VaultLink the other day. Like they are talking about how to see like, what transactions are being made and making sure that everything is like for whatever financial institution wants to use them, they're making safe investments. Like we as a country and as like a free market and a place where I hope people feel like they can innovate, we create these submarkets to be able to address the issues that come with any industry. And sometimes I feel like regulators don't give industry the time necessary to solve their own problems. And I'm seeing with cryptocurrency, like the industry is solving its own problems quite quickly. just to be, I know everyone's so used to instant gratification nowadays, but like the amount of sub industries that have popped up in order to help it's incredible, and it's at a speed that I don't think anyone could imagine. So I want to see maybe in the next couple of years how crypto exchanges start regulating themselves, and if that gives my colleagues like some sense of comfort so we can talk about how to incentivize the industry. And whether that's like just the headquarters of various exchanges in Chicago or Illinois, but also like mining and green mining. So like miners that use renewable energies, could we have them locate in Illinois? We've done that with data centers. So those kind of things I think are definitely on the horizon, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get my colleagues comfortable again.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask about this. What do you think is going to be next on the regulatory front, especially in Illinois? So there's like, there's probably 3 or 4 themes. One, stablecoin bills in general. The feds are trying to push for that, so we have that. Then crypto regulation, owning, custody, and so on. Then there's the green energy stuff, which, God, I hope it starts actually. Look, Texas is reaping the benefits of this, but I really hope it starts coming to other states in Illinois, so people can. It's very hard to argue facts. Facts are stubborn things, and when you actually start seeing solar farms and others come up mining Bitcoin, specifically, I hope that this whole green proof of work, to me, frankly, false narrative. I went to school. I love green energy. I believe in it. I believe we need to get off fossil fuels. I got my MBA for green energy, and this narrative about Bitcoin not being green especially in the long term, is completely false. So what's next? Which side or aspect are people going to tingle?
I would love to see us do some sort of tax incentive for mining companies that want to come to Illinois, the same way we've done with the data center tax incentive, and have some sort of component in which they have to meet criteria for renewables. So like, whether that's 80 or 90% of their energy is through renewables or that they use. I'd love to see something like that. I think that there is interest in that since we just did that data center tax incentive, so people are comfortable. It is, again, it's just one of those things where my colleagues and I think the general population went from cryptocurrency being something they didn't totally understand, but was really exciting and really cool and innovative, to then cryptocurrency being something very scary or being something that was bad and had all these negative connotations. And so now we have to get to the other side of that, where it's almost a combo of, this is still really cool technology. This is still really innovative technology with some great things. Yeah, there are some bad actors in there. How do we solve for those bad actors? How do we prevent those bad actors from infiltrating the market? But right now they're like really stuck in that second spot. So we gotta get them over that hill.
Shimon, can I ask one more? I know you're going to jump in just really quickly. Margaret or Representative Croke, what's the best way of getting politicians over that hill? Because look, we are seeing this on a federal level as well as a state level. Like what is, there's obviously there's the constituents part, right? I don't know. So what's the best way of getting politicians over the hill? Is it joint polling? Is it education? Because we would love to do stuff. We should fly you over into DC. We can go and talk to the Digital Chamber and Blockchain Association, all these guys on the hill here. So what would you recommend doing?
So I think it's definitely education, but it's the way that you do education, right? So, I think I'm going to also say you got to get younger electeds in office. You got to get younger people elected, because I think that I'm generalizing, but I think that there is a desire to learn more from the younger generation than the older generation. And, again, that's a generalization. But I also think that my thought process is I'm going to have to deal with this technology for the next, 50 years. So I got to get to know it, while some people may not have that same, I'm not saying, they're just not thinking about the next 50 years, that point blank. But the education component of this is really important. And I know everyone thinks that like lobbyists are some sort of like lobbyists, that's like this dirty connotation with it. But as we know from crypto, come on guys, reputation is not everything. This all can be a false narrative. why I do think that lobbyists and lobbying organizations can be helpful is because they consolidate information. They know how to talk to legislators. They have those existing relationships. And you have someone who can approach a legislator in the way that they know and are comfortable with to explain the implications of legislation and maybe the implications of regulation and what is good and what is bad. And I think it's important to have those relationships because I think that a lot of people in your industry are not necessarily experts in government and kind of come at it like, we know we're right. We know this is the best course of action. And for many people in elected office, that's not the way that we like to get our information or we get our education. We need a different approach. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, by the way, because like, especially I'm seeing, first of all, I've said it before on the podcast, but I'm extremely bullish on the US government because they have shown again and again that they are very good at not letting tax revenue go to waste. So not basically letting not go to waste, but not basically missing out on the ability to
collect spend your money. That's what I just heard.
No. What I meant is like not let an opportunity to generate tax revenue go to waste. And that's like not to be taken for granted. You know, like, for example, my father was a nuclear physicist working in Europe. And for years, he's been telling me how disastrous Europeans' policy towards energy was. And, you know, how we're relying on Russia and all of these things. And nobody listened to him, you know, and then now, unfortunately, people are paying like such a high price. By the way, there's a misunderstanding. It's not so much the heating bill that's the problem. The problem is that all of the industry in Germany requires energy as an input. So when the cost of energy goes up, suddenly it's uncompetitive, and like companies go bankrupt, and the unemployment rate will go through the roof. So I'm very bullish on the US, and I'm also very bullish on Ari over here. Is he okay?
Yeah, sorry. This is life in the middle of a podcast. Apparently, we have some art trouble and holes in the thing. So this is a very serious situation right now. So please carry on.
As a mom of two, I feel like it is a requirement in all situations, in all Zoom meetings, that children enter the room, right. the virtual room. So I'm. This is also why we're talking about cryptocurrency and innovation, right? Because this is going to impact our kids going forward too in the world that they're living in. And honestly, the global and financial markets they're going to have to deal with.
Exactly. And long-term thinking, that's the problem. What kind of is a problem with our system is that there's not a lot of incentive for politicians to think very, very long-term. Like if you think of something that, you know, you'll be paying for like 5 years and then you'll get the benefit like 15 years from now, it's going to be very tough to push for it. But I think that's exactly where lobbyists can be very helpful. Because, you know, they can show those benefits in a way that, legislators understand. I have to say, though, I'm a little bit disappointed by the report that came out of the White House about mining because it was completely one-sided. And so I don't know if we have to do a better job with lobbyists educating at least the federal level. But there was a great podcast that basically took down the points one by one and literally said, you know, you could make both sides as a case, but like literally it was biased all towards one side, which was anti-mining. So it's very interesting for me to hear, Margaret, what do you think Illinois can do in the sense of encouraging mining? We know that Texas is really big in it. Actually, Texas has a very unique situation where a lot of the renewable forces are far from population areas, right? So there's no incentive to develop them. So that's perfect for mining, for Bitcoin mining, because you can actually make windmills be cost effective when you can use the electricity to mine. We're seeing something very interesting now where hash rate, which is basically think of it as the total amount of mining globally, has hit an all-time high, even into a bear market. And that's like very encouraging because one of the narratives early on for Bitcoin was that when the price goes down, less people will mine, and then that would cause the price to go down even more, and then even less people will mine, and it was called a mining death spiral. So I think now and with the China ban of mining. We've completely dismantled this argument. But I'm very curious to hear what you said about Illinois. What incentives are there for mining, or how do you see like the competitive advantage of Illinois as a state for crypto?
Well, we have an incredibly diverse energy sector, so that makes us very attractive for any type of high energy or any industry that needs a lot of energy to produce. And I think that what's going to be really interesting, you kind of just brought up windmills. It's like in Illinois, we're hoping to get to a point where we're having to export our energy to other states. And we're looking at even putting windmills in like Lake Michigan, because our farmers who have windmill farms, there's a lot of pushback actually on that. It sounds silly, but the red lights at night that light up the sky they're driving people insane. I mean, you can imagine it. It's like if you had a blinking light outside your window when you were trying to sleep. So there's that. There's concern that the windmills are potentially impacting crop production. So putting them in the lake actually has like no effect environmentally, but will produce so much energy. So I think we're looking at how do we grow our energy sector? And that's been a really big priority of the legislature and of Governor Pritzker. How do we build this energy sector? And I think we're going to get to a point where we have a lot of stored energy. And that's where you can start talking about incentivizing mining companies to want to locate in Illinois. And again, the goal is that they would use renewables, and I think that they would be invested in making sure that renewable market continued to grow in Illinois. So, if we're able to create some sort of partnership, I think with these mining companies and almost like good corporate citizens, like a structure that incentivizes them to be good corporate citizens, I think we have a really good chance of like being a hub in the Midwest for mining companies.
Margaret, just to switch topics a little bit, do you see any crypto regulation? I know we talked about Illinois following the federal, but are you bullish or bearish on future crypto regulation, either federally or in Illinois?
There is a lot of unknown, right? So I think for Illinois, I am going to take a back seat this year on pushing any type of crypto or blockchain legislation, unless we're talking about blockchain and government infrastructure, technology infrastructure. I think governments could benefit a lot from blockchain technology, not crypto, but the ability to put records on a blockchain, whether that's like your license or other government records that we need, instead of having to go to the Cook County Recorder of Deeds and go into a file and pull out a piece of paper and all the craziness that goes with that. So, but as crypto, I think I'm going to take a step back this year and see what the federal government does and what that Gillibrand bill looks like it's going to do. I don't know if it's going to move. I mean, again, I hear mixed reports all the time, but I'm not going to give up on it completely. I still think that there's going to be a reckoning that all the states need to do if the federal government doesn't step up. And I also really want to incentivize and encourage crypto companies to come to Illinois. I know we're a blue state, and that can be a little bit, I guess, not a win in our favor right now for these crypto companies who feel like they're kind of their Democrats are coming for them. But I'd love to see Illinois, because we've got so many amazing things going for us, especially around workforce, get some of these companies here. So, we'll see. I think regulation, though, I'm going to leave to the federal government for the near future.
Just one thought on this. I love how you're saying, I think in one statement, you're acknowledging the elephant in the room that, a lot of the crypto culture seems to angle more Republican. I mean, why? It's a little bit more libertarian. But two, it does feel like in the last year or two, for some reason, the Democrats are a little bit more, anti-crypto than Republicans. Although it's bipartisan on both sides. This is such a weird industry. It's bipartisan pro, bipartisan against, actually. But but there's a little bit of center of gravity shifting a little bit towards more Republicans, free markets and libertarian. And I love the way you're saying, look, we're a blue state become. I think a lot of that, the crypto-friendly regulations and thinking forward is good. I think if you can actually get government records on some sort of blockchain, that's great. Have you thought a little bit about, it's going to be a great signal, right, to the market that, hey, the government of Illinois is forward thinking. One of the things I want to ask you is, have you thought about when government records come onto the blockchain, right? And there's maybe, let's call it 3 different buckets. One is permissioned blockchain, where it's, the government, they run their own nodes essentially. And so, it's essentially a ledger secured by the government or maybe a couple of entities. There is permissionless Bitcoin and permissionless everything else. And the reason I separate Bitcoin is kind of the biggest, the most immutable, the hardest one to crack, but it's the hardest, it's government proof. So on one hand, it's good. On the other hand, if you're speaking as part of the government, that could be potentially, bad. Although I would argue it's all good if you're thinking about it in the long term. So are there any discussions about if crypto does come to, from a government level, is it going to be permissioned? Is it going to be like an Ethereum or something else? Is it going to be Bitcoin, or is this whole conversation just way too early?
It's a little early, and I think, but I will say, just as we're talking about this in the initial stages, I think we've got a really awesome opportunity to see the Secretary of State's office in Illinois take a hold of this technology. And Alexi Janulius has talked about wanting to use the technology. If it were me, I would say I would do a permission blockchain. I think that's where I would go. I agree with you that I don't think that there's necessarily anything bad about a permissionless blockchain, but I think that, again, it all depends on how we actually see implementation go. I would love, though, to see the Secretary of State's office own this specifically around license and vehicle registration. It almost would be a pilot for the broader state and all of our government agencies and the records that they use. So, and also Alexi Janulis, young guy in his 40s, this is the impact of having younger elected officials in these really great executive office positions. And I will just hit, you said the Republicans, Democrats are very focused on consumer protections, which we kind of hit on earlier. That is where they go to. I think that there's a lack of education around consumer protection and cryptocurrency and how we can so easily solve for that, in my opinion. But the second thing is that they're short-sighted on some of the implications of blockchain that benefit the same groups of people that, Democrats typically advocate for, whether that is immigrant populations, and the ability to send money so easily and quickly to other countries or other individuals, the underbanked and unbanked populations in the United States, and just kind of a host of other ways to utilize the tech. And I just think there's a missed opportunity there sometimes from my side of the aisle.
I mean, I love that you say that because it's not just the underbanked and unbanked. I saw some slides again. Now I went to a bunch of conferences. So the idea is when there's inflation, it hurts poor people the most, because what happens is that, you can either make your money from labor or you can make it from capital. If you make it from labor, then inflation really hurts you because wages don't keep up with the rising prices. But if you have a bunch of capital, it usually adjusts to inflation. But the problem is, a poor person, not only do they not have a lot of capital to invest, but even if they invest, they're much more sensitive to market cycles. So if they invest in the stock market and the stock market crashes, or if they invest in real estate, suddenly interest rates go up. So, the mortgage for the same house, doubled. So that means that the price of the house will go down. Now, if you're a wealthy person and you have lots of capital, those fluctuations don't bother you. But if you're poor, you're more likely to have to sell, stocks or, when you move houses, if it's your only house versus if it's investment property where you don't have to sell it and you can wait. But if it's your own house and suddenly you have to move to get another job at a different neighborhood, right? Suddenly your mortgage is much more expensive. So I think for people who are, less wealthy, they get much more hurt. And especially now with these economic conditions, I mean, it's a global problem. Like the global debt to GDP is so high that we will have to have inflation. It's really literally the only thing that's democratically feasible, because the alternative is for someone to run for president and say, vote for me, your house will go down by 50%, there'll be 20% unemployment, but it's going to be really good for the long term because we'll build a sustainable economy. Nobody would vote for that guy, especially if someone runs against him and say, I'm going to send you checks. So now I think one of the new things that has happened is Bitcoin has actually outperformed the NASDAQ. It has outperformed FANG stocks by a lot. So last I looked, since the pandemic, so since January 2020, Bitcoin is up 5x. The NASDAQ is up by 45%. Facebook is down by 40%. And real estate is also probably down. And so there's really not many places where people can protect their value in the traditional vehicles. So I think it's really, really important I'm not even saying to recommend to people to buy cryptocurrencies because it's a personal decision, but I'm just saying let's not discourage people and let's not, prevent people from having access to those things. So I wonder if, legislatures are thinking about those things, about basically the gap between rich and poor will only get worse with inflation, and Bitcoin can be a solution to that. But I don't know if it's on your guys' radar.
Well, obviously inflation is on all of our radars, and the way that we tackle that is to your point, if you have someone who is not impacted, a wealthier individual who goes to the gas station and they fill up their tank, they don't really pay attention to that. They notice it a little bit, the increased amount, but it's not putting them back or putting a hardship on them versus someone who is of a lower economic position and they go to the gas station. It's a huge problem for them. We as a state legislature, we're not touching, I think, crypto at this point when it comes to inflation. You make a really great point. And I'm not negating that point. It's just that that's not one of the tools that I think the government is prepared to utilize. And I don't think that the government is a great expert on telling individuals how to invest their money. In Illinois, we've got our own problems with our pension structure that was, which we created during a time of very high inflation, and we're having to deal with that back in the 70s. But I would say, we are not in the government. I don't think we should get involved in making any investments in cryptocurrency at this point, nor should we, be telling other constituents how to do that. But to your point, if there's a difference between encouragement and discouraging investment in crypto, and we shouldn't be doing either. We kind of should just put our hands up and admit when we don't know what we don't know.
So no Bitcoin on the balance sheet. That's what I'm hearing.
No. And that was actually a big thing with when I ran that bill about payments with crypto, is that the government would never be a custodian. They would never actually take in and be holding a crypto asset for any period of time, that it really had to be there had to be that very clear third party processor of a crypto payment.
But Margaret, let me ask you, I want to push on this point, not to put you in the hot seat too much, but why? So, I'll give you maybe the counterpoint to why I think governments should. One of them is more of a call option. Typically governments held gold, right? And so it's almost like you could take a little bit, I'm not saying a lot, allocate 0.5% or whatever into, let's say, a Bitcoin, not the other cryptocurrencies, maybe Ethereum, but let's call it Bitcoin. And then if it hits, great. And if it doesn't hit, you're managing a small, kind of percentage. And the hit is, it's not even hit from a monetary speculation perspective, although that is there. It's a hit in terms of if people start using this technology and start using Bitcoin as a layer, then you almost want to own part of that layer, one, for the upside you give your constituents, and two, to be an active member in securing the network that people will actually use, right? So the question is, will people use Bitcoin or not? If we all believe that people will at some point, right, en masse, then that wouldn't it make sense for the government to have some sort of stake in it, or at least, jump in the pool, so to speak, or put the toe in the water, dip a toe in the water, just to know how it works, and be able to say, yeah, so we are a node, we do own some, right? We have an option value to the network.
Yeah, there's two reasons that, and not that argument isn't valid. The first is perception, and the fact that Illinois has not always been a good steward of taxpayer money, and that to the masses, Illinois residents, that would be a very suspect thing for them to see, just because as Illinois government, I think we've lost that trust of making smart financial decisions, and we're on our way back to that. We've received great credit upgradings. Our governor has probably made the state as healthy as he possibly can fiscally, but I still think there's that perception. So that perception doesn't necessarily live in like a logical argument world. Like perception is perception. And I do think the pension funds have looked at, whether they want to get involved in digital assets. So they're looking at it, they're paying attention to it. I just don't think that they've made that jump yet. And the second thing is the expertise. Like, we can sit here and kind of talk about what you could do. I mean, the amount of things I would like to do in government, on an overhauling basis, the list is very, very long. But, government doesn't operate like a business. Government has a lot of outdated infrastructure. We have a lot of hoops we need to go through, and, for good or for bad. And I think that we don't have necessarily the expertise or the staff that would, for those kind of investments or into a cryptocurrency world. I mean, yes, we have Chase Radwinkle, who's the Department of Banking division head, who's super amazing and smart, and David DiCarlo who's
so good.
He is so good, but like, we don't have a million Chases, right? Like, we don't have a million Chases that make up the full spectrum of government worker. He's just one of those amazing people at the top of the ladder. So that may change, though, by the way, too. Like, we as we have more college graduates who are learning who are learning about cryptocurrency, or kids who are going to enter a world in which it's not a brand new technology. I mean, just even thinking about kids and the way that they use, like, my son is better at my phone and my tablet than I am. He's 2.5. So that, I think it could definitely change, but just right now, I think perception and expertise are the barriers that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand you, and I would probably have the same stance, especially as a state representative, because like monetary issues are usually just handled by the, I don't know even if states could, for example, hold gold in their like treasury. I think that would be a problem, but I totally get it. Like, I mean, I think you guys have exactly the right approach, which is like, let's attract companies to the state, let's make regulation transparent, let's make it less of a hurdle to do business, and let's wait and see. So great. I mean, I actually really wish that we had more people like you in different states that would at least be enthusiastic about having the conversation, because even if you have the conversation and you don't make any decisions, it's much better than just not talking about it. I feel that for so many years, I was just the crazy one talking about Bitcoin. And now at least you have like, the European Central Bank, you have like top people talking about Bitcoin, even if they're against it. I think it's better than just like ignoring it. But I guess, stages. Like first they ignore you, then they fight you, and then so forth. So we'll see where it goes. So Margaret, anything that we haven't asked you that you would like to cover? We have a couple minutes left, so wanna give you the opportunity.
No, I think you guys have hit every part of the spectrum of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and government. I have exhausted all the potential knowledge that I have on this subject with you all, which shows even if I'm someone who is considered an expert in the legislature on cryptocurrency and digital assets, how little I know. So I just appreciate, like you said, having this conversation and continuing the dialogue and not getting scared by, how the market is going to have its ups and downs, and just kind of realizing that this technology is going to be with us for a lifetime, and we really do need to address it, whether you're for it, whether you're against it. But to your point, ignoring it is not going to do anyone any favors.
I like how Shimon said, I'd rather have people against it than neutral. Famous last words, Shimon, famous last words.
I really believe that, I really believe that. Like, for example, there's many people, if we take an example of nutrition, right? You have many people that say, oh, let's only eat meat and eggs. And other people say, no, this is terrible for your health. But nobody says, let's only eat oatmeal. So being against something means that there's a substance there, even if you think it's the wrong substance, but at least it's interesting to people. So
I would also argue it's easier to actually change someone's mind who may be against something because they're at least knowledgeable about the subject matter than someone who is completely neutral and not willing to take the time to learn. And it's a bigger win to change their mind too, because those people are usually bigger advocates. So, and again, it can take time, but I'm a big believer if you're not changing your mind, you've stopped learning. So everyone has the capacity to change their mind, and we should never hold it against people who decide to change their mind if they try to move from, opposition to advocate.
Absolutely. I once had an ex-girlfriend that said the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. So
there you go.
So now I understand all these different women in my life. Yeah, seriously. This is a smart woman.
Wise words.
I now understand why I've been striking out so much. I was like, oh, she's indifferent. Great, I'm winning. Nope. Clearly, I was losing. Well, look, Margaret, thank you so much for coming on the show. Love to have you on again. And I hope people look at, can you remind me, repcroke.org, right, is the URL?
Yep, it's repcroke.com.
.com.
Yeah, and we'll put in the show notes for everybody. In any way you would like us to distribute that people can get in touch with you, whether it's Twitter or any other medium, we're happy to put in the show notes. And please, guys.
Oh, I don't know. We're anti-Twitter now in this office. Oh. I will say we've moved away from Twitter. But...
No worries. I have 160 followers, so definitely not a big Twitter person, because I really think we need more people with political power that are engaged in these conversations.
Absolutely. Thanks, Margaret.